You may or may not know today is Time to Talk Day, which is kind of just encouraging conversations about mental health. So we've roped a few shedders in today, a couple of ambassadors, a couple of shedders, to just have a chat really about kind of their experiences of how sheds might be a positive thing towards supporting men's mental health. So I'll ask everyone to introduce themselves so you know who you're hearing from, and then we'll just have a little chat amongst ourselves. So I guess, Mike, you want to go first? Introduce
Okay.
yourself.
Hi, I'm Mike. I'm from Blue Shed, which is in Bluebury in Oxfordshire, and we've shed for about 3 years now.
Great. Ian?
Hi, yeah, I'm Ian from the Garran Park Shed in Essex. We've been running around 3 years, obviously with a slight hiatus for COVID, same as everybody else.
Yeah. And John Paul?
I am from the Pen Shed, which is one of the one around the UK, which is run by Age UK. This shed has been running for 7 years, and hand in hand with working at the shed, I've also worked with Mind for the last 3 years.
Brill. And Henry?
Hi guys, I chair Pouring Land Shed. We're 5 miles south of Norwich, and we've been running for 10 years.
Great. So everyone's been involved in sheds for a number of years. But I guess, yeah, first things first, really, what did you think of some of the comments from that video?
I thought they were very pertinent. I think certainly the older generation, I can see it's changing rapidly, and I can see young men being, as they grow older, not being so reticent, but certainly the older generation were brought up, big boys don't cry. You sort your own problems out, you don't share, all that kind of stuff. And this has cropped up again and again. If you've got mental health issues particularly, then it's viewed as a weakness and something not to share.
Yeah.
But what I find down our shed is that no overt questions are asked, but guys do open up. We know our strap line shoulder to shoulder, and conversations do open up, and issues are explored. But certainly our shed, I can call a meeting to discuss diabetes and have a doctor along, or other medical issues, and guys say, yeah, I'll come to that. But when I said, shall we have a discussion about mental health? Oh, well, I'm all right. I don't need to go to that. So I think it, in part, as far as sheds are concerned anyway, I think there's a bit of a generational thing going on.
I think I'd concur with Henry on a lot of that. We certainly don't have active conversations around health in general or mental health specifically. However, we've had notably one chap who came along to us who was in his 40s, and he'd spent most of his life, if you'll excuse the expression, being used as a bit of a punch bag and kicked around like a dog because he wasn't the brightest button in the box. But when he got to know the guy, he was a really genuine guy. He'd had a few issues and was very open about them, but he developed remarkably over about a year he was with us, from this chap who would come along, wouldn't come inside the shed, just stand outside the shed, just wanted, give me something to do, can I tidy something, can I do this and that. The time he actually left us, because he's now moved on to other things, he was turning bowls on our lathe, and he'd become a fairly integral part of the shed. And I think, had we had a conversation with him trying to discuss his mental health, I don't think it would have worked. But because he got to know us and understand that we were just blokes like him, we weren't threatening, we were there to support him, he was happy to open up, and I believe got more out of that than if he'd gone to some sort of formalised counselling session. So I certainly think, almost a softly approach is it tends to work for most blokes.
Almost like I suppose a safe space where people don't have to share, but they can if they want to, I suppose.
Yeah, very much so. There's definitely never any pressure, but I do hear conversations around the shed of people, I'm a bit fed up today, or this happened at the weekend. And I've been involved in those conversations as well, whereas I think most of those blokes, certainly when they first met other guys at the shed, they wouldn't have had that conversation at all.
Yeah.
I think a big part of this, I mean, you have touched on it. When we were younger, I remember hearing the phrase, don't be so soft and toughen up, and those sort of things. These are roles that are cast for us as men. Obviously, as we move forward, it's getting a little better dealing with these things, but that's reinforced through a lifetime, particularly when you get to people of a certain age, 40s, 50s. And breaking that down and making people realise that dealing with these things, and to get to my second point, when we talk about mental health, obviously I haven't worked in that field myself for quite some time. When we talk about mental health, particularly men, we'll see that's something that doesn't really apply to them. I know how to do this and how to do that and how to deal with this and that. Mental health is not only an illness that has to be dealt with. Mental health should be like other forms of health, as in you will go running to keep fit. You will eat fresh vegetables and fruit to keep your body fit. Mental health should be an ongoing process rather than just something that has to be dealt with when it becomes a problem. And I think the sheds do this really well, because a lot of the guys will come to the sheds and it is a drip by drip process. It's not walk through the door, 2 days better, everything's sorted. And getting to your point about talking, it is that drip process again. When bit by bit you become to trust people, and you will let your guard down, and you will perhaps let a crack show on your armor, and you realize that the other people around you, regardless of whether you want to call it feelings, emotions, whatever hat you want to put on it, we are all humans and we all have similar things, and hopefully we can share and help other people.
Well said. I agree with that. I think a common thing, and this is a bit of a badge really, but a lot of the guys that come along to the sheds have kind of lost their identity. They've stopped doing something. They may have become divorced or widows. They've stopped being a husband, or they've retired, so they've stopped being an electronic engineer or whatever it might be, and they haven't quite found a new role. Whereas when they turn up at the shed, they find a bit of space for themselves. It might be woodworking, metalworking, fixing electronic stuff, fixing whatever, but they find a space for themselves where they're comfortable. And then when people say to them, what do you do? Instead of saying nothing, or I'm retired, or whatever, they say, I belong to a shed. And the whole conversation opens up. And quite a few guys have come back to me and said that. I'm proud to say that I'm a shedder.
And I think picking up on the video as well, and talking about kind of roles, one of the things a couple of people in that video commented on and said that they saw themselves as a protector for their family, or this role where they had to take responsibility for looking after other people, and I suppose if for any reason that's something that they felt that they were unable to do, it's a lot of pressure, I think, to keep that role up and not show any kind of as John Paul said, we're all human. We all have things that will affect us and make us feel a certain way. So, to not be able to show that, I imagine, must be a lot of pressure on somebody.
I also think that culturally, different societies have moved at different paces around how men feel and how open men are. Because certainly, generationally, I mean, I'm nowhere near as buttoned up as my father was, and I know my son's nowhere near as buttoned up as I am, and I think I'm quite chilled, but he thinks I'm not. So and it takes a while, and different cultures are getting there at different points in their in their exploration of this. So I think it's not a one size fits all at all. I don't think, anyway.
But age plays into it a lot as well. I think obviously in your younger years and you're more uptight and focused on different things. I think as you get older, you stop. The balance starts to shift a bit, and you start looking a bit more at yourself and wondering, kind of, well, can I take the edges off that a little bit? And I think once you start actually taking a proper look at yourself and your motivations and why you're angry at something, and is this anger irrational, or why are you feeling useless? And you're right, you have to recast yourself in a new role, and we like to belong to a tribe, regardless of the people that say, "Oh, I'm independent." Yes, we're all individuals, but we're all the same individuals, and you want to find a tribe. And I think within sheds, a certain bunch of people, they find their tribe, they find their like-minded people.
Yeah, definitely. Mike, what do you think? Would you agree with any of those comments from the video?
I do. I think it gets really basic. How do I tell if I've had a good day? How do you measure the days as they go by? And in companionship, you can say, "Oh, I did that today." It's this goal-oriented view society builds on us, that we're supposed to have a career and we're supposed to make achievements. And you break it down to just the small ones. And if you can't measure something during the day, you feel you've missed something. Whereas sharing time with others, perhaps making something, you get that sense of achievement.
Yeah.
And that's my analogy of the eating good fresh fruit and veg. That ongoing mental health is that's a brilliant way to actually put it. That's it's ongoing. It's doing something that keeps you mentally healthy. And it isn't that see something, fix it.
Yeah, it's not waiting until it's crisis point, I suppose, is it? It's kind of forming good habits and having regular outlets and doing things to maintain your well-being, rather than kind of end up in a point where you having an emergency or feel very, very, I don't know, upset about something.
Well, as he said, it's for men. It's as he said, I did this today, I did that today. Feeling useful, I guess, is the easy way to put it. Feeling useful.
Yeah. And what about? Oh, go on, Henry.
No, I think as a society, we've been so certainly in a lot of Eastern cultures, simply being elderly is venerated, and they look after their old people, and they respect their wisdom, their experience. We've not really had that here. Maybe after the Second World War, the guys that went through that. But generally speaking, if you're old, you're a drain on the NHS. That's about the size of it. Whereas we know we've got a lot to give. But very recently, I went into Norwich City to do a bit of shopping. And on 3 separate occasions, two women and a young man, both youngish, opened a door for me. I received
you must
this.
be showing your age, Henry.
I know. I received this with mixed feelings. On one hand, I'm thinking, okay, well, they're disrespecting me for my age. That's good. On the other, I must be getting to be a silly old sod. Yeah, I think it's an interesting and difficult subject. I think intergenerational relationships.
Well, I was out climbing in Wales last year. It's completely off key, but just on your story. And I was climbing up something, and somebody lent me a hand to get over someone, and I heard out of earshot they said that was kind of you to help that old man.
It's all relative. It's all relative. Yeah.
But when you're when you're in your 20s, somebody in their I'm shortly going to be in my 80s, just seems vanishingly old. You just cannot imagine being there. But in my head, I'm still 20s. I still think I might be able to do something and quickly prove myself wrong. But yeah, no, it's a very odd transition, I think.
Do you think, obviously we talked before, Ian mentioned about the generational changes and, your dad and your son. Do you think today for the older generation, seeing that younger people might be more willing to open up about talking about conversations about mental health, do you think that's helped the older generation maybe do the same, or?
I think it's quite difficult to overcome years-long ingrained culture. It may be on an individual level, might help some people. I actually suspect that the opposite might be happening, that some older folk are going, look at these youngsters, they don't know, they can't cope with a cold sort of thing.
Yeah.
So I think there is that. I think the generation that comes after myself, my son and daughter's generation, I think will be the first generation that will understand and have understood their mental health most of their lives and respect other people's challenges with mental health, because it's been normalized, for want of a better expression, that people all do have issues with their mental health, be they good or bad. And as John Paula says, everyone needs to take care of their mental health, and how you do that varies from person to person. But yeah, I don't think it will be until the kids growing up in their 30s, the sort of 30-somethings growing up now get to be 70 and 80, that then it will be a full acceptance from sort of teens onwards that everyone is on the same page. That's my view anyway.
Yeah, it does. It takes a long time, doesn't it?
I think the problem, and you have sort of defined it as much as we can ever define this problem, is one, identifying what is a mental health problem and when is it actually a problem, and when is it just something that you sort of is normalizing your day to day. When do you need to deal with this? And defining where that line is for everyone is going to be different. And telling people that they need to recognize when they're having a mental health problem. I often will reflect on something I've done a day or two before, something that has made me angry or has in some way taken me off my normal, fairly steady perch. And I look back and I think, did I deal with that properly? Why was I angry? Was it irrational? And, can I do something better about it? Or can I even go rewind and go and undo what I did? But that line is going to be different for everyone. And you get to the I'm going to use the word snowflake, as you said, about can they not cope. So obviously the older generation will call people snowflakes. But somewhere within that gamut of being a pile of jelly that can't cope with life and being as tough as a bag of nails, you need to have the right things at the right times and know when each is appropriate, because you couldn't get through your daily life otherwise.
Yeah, and that's the thing, I guess. We've got a short video to show at the end from Patrick, who's one of our ambassadors and also part of the Health and Wellbeing group, and he made a short video a while ago which was talking about mental health and mental illness, and in that video he was talking about everybody has mental health, and it's that thing of, you'll have times just like your physical health, there'll be times when you are well and there'll be times when you are not as well, or kind of there'll be things that may kind of upset you or trigger you, but I think as John Paul said, one of the important things is maintaining that and always having it as a priority, to just keep it kind of ticking over and do things that help you feel good.
And hopefully that's where sheds come in.
Yeah.
It's about finding space for yourself where you can relax and just do your own thing, have easy conversations, no huge expectations. You can kind of chill out within the space, and I think that's what sheds offer.
I think it's
sorry. Please carry on.
Sorry, I was just picking up on that point. I think it's kind of a lot of what the sheds do. It's like work, but without any of the pressure that comes with work. So you can kind of get So you're not time bound. You're not there to make money.
There's no foreman.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, interesting. That was exactly the point I was going to ask you, John Paul. As a paid employee running the shed, do you think you have a different relationship with it to the guys that come along and use your shed?
I try to run it as a team, and I try to encourage the idea that we're all equals, we're all as important as each other. I'm not the boss, I'm not in charge. Although, to be frank, without somebody in charge, it would be chaos. But my approach is that I'm no more important because I'm being paid. I am the same as all of them. But they do come to me for any bigger decisions, or if they want to have projects to do, if they want help or advice. So I do obviously have some kind of status in their mind as someone slightly more important than they might. Well, not important, that's the wrong word, but somebody who has more to do than some of the other shedders. But at the same time, I try to encourage them. In fact, we always get them to work as teams. It's never an individual on anything. Yeah, I try not to make it appear that I'm the boss. That's probably what I'm trying to say in my very roundabout way.
Yeah.
Do you still get the enjoyment, though, John Paul, and the kind of feeling that you can share as well?
Oh, I mean, this is run by a charity, and you might know how charities pay, which is not that great. So I am, so I'm not doing it for the money, but it is. So I mean, everyone's heard this phrase probably from their dads as well, because obviously we all go trotting our dad's phrases out. If you find a job that doesn't feel like work, you'll never have to work a day in your life. And when I come around here, a lot of the time, I'm not going to say all the time, sometimes it feels very much like work, but a lot of the time, it doesn't feel like work. It's like coming around to meet the guys, help them get on with stuff, fix things, do all the stuff that guys like doing. And yeah, I mean, as far as a person being suited to a job and a job's being suited to a person, I think I find it very hard to find something which was more ideal for me. And when I first came to this 6 years ago, I at that point had a massive run-in with mental health. I'd had what would be called in the olden days a mental breakdown. I felt everything was falling apart. I felt I was useless. I was on the shelf. Who's going to want me at this age, which was 46 at that point? All those things. Then this job came along, and I will say it again and again. I don't think I could ever do as much for Men in Sheds as Men in Sheds did for me at that time.
Cool.
Yeah.
So you have a day-to-day job that brings you fulfillment without too much pressure, which is a great place to be.
Yeah.
Absolutely, yes.
And I suppose, John Paul, as well, you've been in that position where, as you've just said there about your own experiences with your mental health, you've seen it from both sides. I guess you've been there and had the support from a shed, kind of found yourself in that position where now you're seeing the impact it can have on other people as well.
Oh, absolutely. I mean, at the time, not being the kind of person who would self-examine or we were talking earlier about men, toughening up and sorting their own stuff out, and I was very much of that mindset. I actually didn't think there was anything out there for me. I didn't think anyone could help. I thought that, what am I going to do with myself now? I'm useless. And that I look back at how I felt then, and it was so overwhelming and overriding that I didn't think there's possibly a way out. And then I find out there's all these other things out there, and it makes a difference. It really does.
Yeah. And I'm sure probably all of you here will have had I've certainly heard it, the experience where somebody is telling you about them joining a shed and they've said that it's changed their life or it's saved their life or whatever it is. And that, to hear a comment like that is massive. And you think about, what the potential alternative could have been.
You never quite know what or who is going to walk in the door with a shed. So one chap we took on has learning difficulties. Best guess, I'd say he has an understanding of a 12-year-old-ish, but he is knocking on the door of 50. Quite difficult to keep his attention, to keep him consistent. You know, you'll ask him to do something and he'll take it in his head to go and do something else entirely different. But the guys act like a bunch of grandparents, I suppose, and take him under their wing, find him things to do, keep him occupied, listen to his unending stream of consciousness. Sometimes get irritated, but on the whole, quite supportive. And he keeps coming, and he's never belonged to anything in his life. He keeps coming. And then, not so long ago, he was having his doorbell rung and kids running off. He lives on a second floor flat. He was kept on running down, nobody there, running down, nobody there, running down, nobody there. And apart from anything else, he has a heart monitor and he's got other health problems. His sight is not good. Anyway, he lost his rag and he picked up a replica samurai sword and chased them down the street.
Oh,
Yeah. I thought this was natural behaviour, but apparently it's frowned upon. So
I'm afraid having a samurai sword is the bit that's not quite natural behaviour.
It was a replica, John Paul.
Yeah.
Oh, okay.
Replicas are illegal. Correct real ones are not.
Yeah, well, you can. I've seen them for sale. You know, one of these things you buy if you're into Star Wars and that kind of stuff. So it was blunt in every regard. If you clouted somebody with it, you'd certainly make their eyes water, but you wouldn't take their head off.
Well, I suppose at least he was fit if he was running.
Yeah.
Well, what happened?
He was arrested. I could argue that he wasn't treated appropriately because of his mental condition. But anyway, he ends up being charged with a bladed weapon in a public place and disorderly conduct and stuff. So I spent more hours than I wanted to do back in court again, supporting him through the process. But when he appeared in court, half the shed came along and sat in the public gallery, supporting him, and the magistrate asked who we were, and I got up and said who we were and gave a kind of character reference for the chap. And the upshot of it was that the magistrate said that they were thinking of a custodial sentence, which they discarded, but then they were thinking of a probation order and an order to work and one thing and another. And then they said that because he has the support of Men's Shed, because he's going to the shed and is involved in community projects, we are going to give you an absolute discharge.
Wow.
So quite a turn up, really. Yeah. But he himself was very moved that all the guys came along to support him. So yeah,
I'm sure. And I guess it's that thing of what Ian said at the start, that kind of atmosphere where someone can come along and, you know, share if they want to, not share if they don't want to, but it's that supportive environment, safe space. You know, you're bonding through activity as well as conversation. And yeah, I've heard, well, maybe not as extreme as that, but I heard a story from a guy in Stockport who'd managed to get himself, something had happened on his lock on his front door. He ended up locked in his house and he couldn't get out. So first people he rang was the shed, and a group of guys from the shed came down. One of them knew what they were doing and they managed to get him out of the house. And yeah, it was just, you know, 2 minutes later they were there sorting him out, and it was just it was it's similar, maybe not quite as extreme, but you know, supportive kind of environment.
Yeah. Amazing how many ex-housebreakers congregate in sheds, isn't it? That does remind me, we've had a chap recently joined us who's quite autistic, so I need to check whether he's got a yen for samurai swords, just in case has an experience of that.
Well, following on the back of that, one thing I did notice that guys around here, and for guys in general, don't have such a good social circle as women do. Women will go out and have cups of tea, wine, visit each other, all the rest. But guys will work with other guys if they have a thing to do, and they're happy to do that. And obviously we've got that shoulder thing we talk about. But they would rather, so let's say their car's broken down, they would rather ring somebody from the shed to come and bring them a set of jump leads than actually go through the process of getting a friend. They have that kind of relationship with people in the shed where, you know, they make these contacts, and a few of them see each other outside the shed, but it tends to stay mostly within the shed. But getting your bit about people with mental health, because I work with Mind, for a little while we had a bit of an overlap, and we had people coming from Mind to work down at the shed. So we had people in with schizophrenia and bipolar and you name it. And the guys in the shed mostly were from a wide background, but they hadn't dealt with people with ongoing long-term mental health problems. And they would have seen them, in using the old phrase, as kind of nutters. We don't like to use that word, but once they started working with them and they realised they're just people as well, they became much more accepting, and they kind of, and as you said, they started almost not quite adopting them, but when they came in, they realised that, you know, they could ask them to do X, Y, and Z, and they could help them and give them instruction. And it also broke down the barriers that they had towards people who had long-term mental health problems, which was really nice to see.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And I suppose in most sheds there's going to be members who have got, you know, health conditions, whether that's physical or mental health conditions that people don't know about, and, you know, they're just shed members just doing their stuff, and they might talk about them and they might not talk about them.
Perhaps we can say being a shed member is a mental health condition.
Yeah.
It's a positive mental health condition. Isn't it?
Yes.
It's certainly some form of sickness, you know. I mean, just the tool addiction is ridiculous.
Well, I think we've got I think Leo's got one as I say, kind of short video to show, but just before we kind of wrap up, I guess, have any of you got any kind of final comments or anything else that you'd like to add that we've not mentioned?
I don't think so.
No. Well, it's been really nice to hear from you, and you know, I think, yeah, just to have this chat and hear from you, hear about your thoughts, hear about your reaction to the video, and yeah, just very, very nice to see you all, and thank you for taking part today. Leo, I don't know if you can show that last video. Leo is behind the scenes somewhere.
I read of an American who'd moved to live in the UK. He very quickly got to understand, when asked by a mate, fancy a swift pint, that it meant getting down the pub at 6 o'clock, drinking until late, and then stopping off for a kebab on the way home. According to research, men lie on average 3 times a day. It showed that men's most common lie is, I didn't have that much to drink. The second most common lie is, nothing's wrong, I'm fine. This is also women's most common lie, who, by the way, only lie on average twice a day. So next time someone says to you, I'm fine, ask them again, how are you today? Or how was your weekend? Or just reply, that's great. You know where I am if you need me. It just may help someone to talk, and it could save a life.
Yeah, so I think that was a good couple of tips from Patrick, is that thing of just asking people twice. You know, people say fine, it's just like a knee-jerk reaction, isn't it? And it may not always be the case.
Cool.
Yeah.
Well, the English reply tends to be not too bad. You can't say you're good. You can't say you're good. Not too bad.
My strap line is fair to middling, yeah.
Yeah.
Well, round the shed, the phrase which is becoming common use is still above the ground.
Well, yeah, I guess we'll wrap it up, and yeah, I don't know if you all just want to say bye to whoever's watching, and I'll just say thank you again to you all for taking part and for your time. But yeah, I guess we'll finish up now. So thanks everyone, and goodbye.
Thank you, Rachel.
Thanks. I hope it's useful.
Bye.